She had no money, no backup, no one to call if things went wrong. Just a worn-out coat, a part-time job at a local bakery, and a heart too kind for the cold world she lived in. Emma never thought that giving away a cupcake would cost her everything. But what she didn't know was that someone very powerful was already watching. This is a story about a choice, a simple act of kindness, and how it set off a chain reaction that would change a young woman's life forever. Emma was 22 years old, a college student who spent her mornings in class, her afternoons serving customers at a local restaurant, and her weekends waking up before sunrise to work at a small bakery tucked into the corner of a quiet neighborhood street. Her life was simple and difficult at the same time. She lived alone in a tiny studio apartment above an old bookstore. The walls were thin. The heater barely worked in the winter. Her bike had one working gear and no bell. But Emma never complained. She was grateful for what she had and determined to build something better, one shift at a time. She wanted to become a nutritionist, not because it sounded impressive, but because she had grown up watching her single mother struggle to feed 3 children on a budget. Emma believed no one should have to choose between eating well and paying rent. She wanted to help people learn how to eat healthier without spending more than they could afford. Most people noticed Emma's smile before they noticed her uniform. She had a light in her eyes that even 5 o'clock in the morning could not dim. She would hum softly while arranging pastries, remember every regular customer's favorite order, and always added a little extra kindness into every transaction, whether it was a warm hello or a gentle compliment to brighten someone's day. It was a Friday afternoon in December when the doorbell of the bakery jingled softly. A small girl, around 7 years old, stepped inside. Her coat was 2 sizes too big. Her boots were mismatched. She wore faded mittens and a wool hat pulled down over her ears. She approached the counter slowly, clutching something in her hands. It was a crumpled $1 bill. "Hi," she said shyly. "Do you have anything for this much?" "It is for my grandma. Today is her birthday." Emma knelt slightly to look the girl in the eye. She smiled gently. The cheapest item on the menu was $4. But Emma did not hesitate. She reached behind the glass display and picked out the brightest, most colorful cupcake they had. It was decorated with pink frosting, rainbow sprinkles, and a small sugar flower on top. She wrapped it carefully in a small box, tied it with a red ribbon, and added a candle. When she handed the cupcake to the girl, she said softly, "Tell your grandma happy birthday from me, all right?" The girl's eyes lit up. "Thank you, miss," she whispered. Then she turned and ran out into the snow, holding the box close to her chest as if it were the most precious gift in the world. Emma stood by the window for a moment, watching her disappear down the street. And though the shop was cold and her shift was not over, for the first time that week, her heart felt full. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew one thing for sure, that it had been the right thing to do. 10 minutes had passed since the little girl left the bakery. Emma was wiping down the counter, still smiling faintly to herself, when the front door swung open with force. In walked Sandra, the owner of the bakery. She was in her late 40s, tall, stern, and always dressed in perfectly pressed suits. Her presence carried tension. Her shoes tapped sharply on the tiled floor, and her eyes scanned the room like searchlights. She was holding a clipboard and a phone, her expression unreadable. Emma greeted her politely, but Sandra did not respond. Instead, she walked behind the counter and said in a cold, measured voice, "Did you give something away?" Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure how to answer. Sandra placed her phone face up on the counter. On the screen was a paused video clip from the bakery's security camera, showing Emma handing the cupcake to the little girl. "Yes," Emma replied, her voice calm. She only had $1. It was her grandmother's birthday. "I thought," Sandra interrupted, her tone sharp. You thought this was a charity? You thought it was acceptable to take products I paid for and just hand them out?" Emma stood still. She was a child. It was one cupcake. "That cupcake costs $4, Sandra snapped. "And I do not care how touching her story is. This is a business, not a soup kitchen. If you want to hand out baked goods, you can do it on your own time with your own money. You are fired." The words struck like thunder. Fired, just like that? Emma slowly took off her apron, folded it carefully, and placed it on the counter. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her head held high. She did not argue. She did not plead. She simply nodded once and walked toward the door. Outside, The air was cold and sharp. Snowflakes fell slowly, landing on her shoulders like tiny whispers. She did not have gloves. Her breath came out in soft white clouds as she stood on the sidewalk. Uncertain of where to go or what to do next, she had done the right thing. She knew that. But at that moment, all she could feel was the weight of the consequences. She had lost her job, and with it, her only source of income. That as she walked home through the snow-covered streets, her mind replayed the moment with the little girl again and again. That smile. That tiny voice saying thank you. The way she hugged the cupcake box like it meant everything. And for a moment, despite everything, Emma allowed herself a small thought that if she could go back, even knowing what it would cost, she would do it all over again. Emma sat on the edge of her bed in silence. Her apartment was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the old wall clock above the door. Her coat was still on. Her gloves were damp in her hands. The job was gone. Her final paycheck would not cover rent. And the rest of the month stretched ahead like an empty road in winter. She stared at the small cardboard box on her table. Inside was a slice of banana bread she had bought earlier with her staff discount. She was no longer staff now. The banana bread no longer felt like a treat. It felt like the last thing she would allow herself before cutting costs again. Then came the knock. It was sharp, precise. One knock, then a pause, then two more. Emma rose slowly, unsure of what to expect. She crossed the small room, glanced through the peephole, and froze. Outside her door stood a man in full military dress. Uniform. His posture was straight, his face calm and composed. Behind him, parked by the curb, were two large black SUVs. One man stood beside each vehicle. Another held an umbrella, even though the snow had nearly stopped, and beside the officer stood a familiar face, Lily. Emma opened the door, stunned. The little girl smiled brightly. "Hi, Miss Emma," she said softly. The man stepped forward and offered a firm but respectful nod. "My name is General Grant Wallace," he said. "I believe you met my daughter this afternoon." Emma nodded. Slowly, her voice caught in her throat. The general continued. "I just returned home from overseas. Today was my first day back in 3 months. I had not even taken off my boots when Lily came running up to me, holding a cupcake box, crying, and saying, 'Daddy, a nice lady gave this to me for Grandma's birthday because I did not have enough money.'" He paused. His eyes were steady, but his voice had softened. "Emma, that lady was you. And your kindness reached me." Emma tried to speak, but no words came out. "I made a few calls," the general said. "Found out what happened. The job, the dismissal, all of it. And I believe when good people do good things, the world ought to reward them, not punish them." He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter of appreciation, signed by the general himself, along with a full scholarship covering the remainder of her college tuition and a job offer, an opportunity to join a nonprofit wellness program supporting families of active duty soldiers. Emma stared at the letter, her hands trembling. The general spoke one more time. "People like you are the reason I fight for this country. Thank you for being exactly who you are." 3 months had passed since the day Emma opened her door to find a general standing outside. Her life no longer looked the same. She had accepted the scholarship and re-enrolled in her final semester with confidence instead of fear. Her grades improved. Her energy returned. Her hope resurfaced like spring after a long, unforgiving winter. She also began working part-time with the General's Wellness Foundation. Her role was simple at first, preparing nutrition guides, assisting at community events, visiting families who needed help planning affordable meals. But her kindness and insight stood out quickly. Within weeks, she was leading workshops. Within 2 months, she was speaking at schools. And by the end of the 3rd month, Emma had become a local name, a symbol of quiet compassion, of what can happen when someone chooses to care, even when no one is watching. She was no longer just the girl behind the bakery counter. She had become someone young girls looked up to, someone parents trusted, someone soldiers and their families appreciated. Deeply, the town had not forgotten either. When word of Emma's firing had spread, customers stopped going to the bakery. Reviews dropped. Orders dried up. People simply chose to buy their pastries elsewhere, from places that valued more than just the price tag. By spring, the bakery had closed its doors permanently. Sandra, the owner, had lost not just her business, but the trust of a town that believed in kindness. Meanwhile, Emma had gained something far more valuable than money. She had found purpose, community, respect, but most of all, she had discovered what she was truly capable of, not by chasing recognition, but by doing the right thing when no one asked her to. The general's daughter, Lily, now visited her every weekend. They would bake muffins together, decorate them with sprinkles, and deliver them to a local shelter nearby. Emma had made a difference, not through wealth or status, but through heart, because sometimes the smallest act of goodness can echo further than we ever imagine. The truth is, kindness is not weakness, it is strength. And when you lead with compassion, the world does not forget. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on someone in your life who made a quiet difference. Maybe it was a kind word, a helping hand, or simply the courage to do what was right. Now, ask yourself this: what small act of kindness could you offer today? Because you never know who is watching. And you never know how far that one gesture might go. If you believe the world needs more stories like this, do not scroll away. Click the subscribe button, share this video with someone you care about, and leave a comment below with one word. Hope that we read every message. We share every story. And we will be back soon with more true tales that will stir your heart and lift your spirit. Until then, be kind, stay strong, and remember, one small choice can change everything.